Hey everybody, I'm back with episode 55, and this week I have a wonderful guest this has been in the pipeline for quite a while and I've been really excited about it. So this week's guest is Karen McCarthy and she's going to be talking to us all about her relationship with Jasmine. So I don't want to leave it any longer. Karen, how are you doing? And just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited about doing this because I just love what you do. It's so needed. And I'm sure everyone listening to this has been through grief with a pet at some level and knows how little support there is available. So having someone like you out there, I just wish I had known about you a couple of years ago is all I can say. Because it is like, I would always say like losing my dog was the hardest thing that ever happened to me in my life. And I'm going to cry in this podcast, so we'll just
That's
put that
okay.
out straight away. But yeah, I love any opportunity that I get to speak about her because I feel like I can keep her memory alive that way and chat about her. And she was so special to me. And then the other side, I'm always happy to share my experience with it, how I went through it, how much it changed my life, both having her change my life, losing her changed my life you know, and if it helps anybody just understand, because my heart absolutely goes out to anybody who is dealing with the grief right now because it is the hardest. I believe, and I might get some, pushback on this, but I really think it's one of the worst losses you can go through in your life, no matter who you have in your life. I think it is the hardest loss first.
Well, definitely agree with that. I think you know that I would have, and I think people listening to this podcast, if they're clicking on it at all, they're gonna agree with that because there's so much people will laugh and there's so much negative stuff in society about this that we're just kind of driven underground and we don't want to for fear of being embarrassed or shame, and there's just a long list of things. So I think having these conversations is so needed, and it's only been recently that I've had guests on the podcast, but the feedback has been incredible for people to listen to other people's experiences has really helped them to feel like they're not going crazy and
Yeah.
that they're not alone. So I think I'm delighted that you're here with me right now and that we're having this chat. But what I'd love to know is really when you first met Jasmine or whenever that was, how was the bond formed? Tell me, was it love at first sight? Tell me, how was it?
It was. So we're going back to 2009. So it was, I had just bought my house and I had no furniture and no floors and nothing, not even a TV. And I said, I need to get a dog. Before I get anything else, this house is empty with a dog. It was probably the main reason I wanted to buy a house was because if I rent, I can't get a dog. So I was like, I need to buy a house, get a dog, worry about the furniture later. So
Priorities, yes.
I had an idea in my head that I would love to get like this. I had been in actually randomly, I'd been in Egypt about a year or two before and had randomly come across this tiny, tiny little dog that I had never seen the kind of breed before in my life. This is going back a while now, so it wasn't no Instagram or that kind of stuff. Um, and it was a Pomeranian I found out afterwards. And I was just like, it's so tiny. It is so cute. Oh my God, how have I not known about this breed ever before? And I just became obsessed with that kind of dog and I wanted that kind of dog. And I came across this picture of not one but two little Pomeranians sitting cuddled up together beside a massive tennis ball, which was a normal size tennis ball. And I was like, oh my God, they are like one of them, like Jasmine was full black and she looked like a bear to me. And beside her was Roxy, her sister, who just looked like a little fox. And I just was like, oh my God, I need them both. Like, why would I get one? There's two there. And I called up this lady and so she was living out in Tipperary and she had got these dogs were had been a litter of like a couple of different dogs and she had taken them into her house. She kind of did this, big area in Tipperary, but she had an Alsatian and she had a Jack Russell and she said the Jack Russell wasn't really too keen on having them there and she was terrified something terrible was going to happen. She's like, I just can't keep them. I don't know what to do. But she really didn't want to give them up. So she was interviewing me on the phone for like, I was sitting in Starbucks with my sister, like felt like it was the interview of my life. And she was asking me every question under the sun. Had I had dogs before? what would I do in this scenario? What would my work hours like? All this. And I was just like, oh my God, please let me pass this interview. And then I was like, she was like, which one are you interested in? And I was like, I kind of want them both. And she was like, oh, because they're sisters. And I would like, they're so connected. I'd love them to go together. So you kind of go to the top of the list if that's the case. So she was literally doing these interviews with loads of different people. So anyway, I rose to the top of the list because I took the two of them and I went to meet her to get them. And when I saw them now, I saw them in a photo and they were tiny and they were just like, they would have almost fit just in your hand. They were
Oh,
so small and they were probably about 5 months at that stage even, but they were just tiny. And I literally just cried as soon as I saw the two of them. And I just like, I couldn't drive. My sister came with me. I had driven down. I was like, I can't drive. I have to sit in the back and cuddle them. Like, so my
yeah.
sister drove us home and I sat in the back. I was holding Roxy and Jasmine was sitting beside me because she was feeling a little bit car sick. And I was just like, this is the best day of my life. And like, oh my God, they just changed my life completely in
Mhm.
ways that I just never would have expected. And I've had dogs all my life, so I like, knew what I was in for in a lot of ways. But they were just this little duo of just like love and just trouble and fun. And they just were, oh God, everything I just even know I needed. And so that was back in 2009. And like, not a long story short, but just like they were so much more to me than just dogs, as I'm sure
Mm.
everyone can relate to that. But beyond being like this constant presence of support and love and all these things that dogs are in our lives, they were actually the reason that I started my business that I now have. They were the reason I moved to France when I did. I'm back now, but I've always wanted to go back to France and I wouldn't have gone without them. So they had such a key role in all these massive changes that I made in my life in
Mm.
my kind of 30s that just I know I wouldn't have done it without them. And like I can't even imagine what my life would be now. I would still be in a job I hate. I would have never gone back to France. I would be miserable and I just can't even imagine what my life would have been like. And it's just because those two little souls came into my life and literally changed it for the better.
That is incredible. And I'd love to delve in a bit more about those life changes. And I'm sure that like both of them helped you through challenges as well. And obviously moving country and everything. Like,
Uh,
what was it about both of them that kind of helped you to make those life changing decisions?
so I think on a like base level, it was that I was in a situation where I was in a job that I was very, very unhappy in. But
Hmm.
I was like at the time again, now I'm like, what were you thinking? But I was like, I'm so old. I'm like 32 or whatever. Like, how would I ever do anything else? It's like, what? I don't know what I was thinking. But that was my logic at the time. And dogs just have this way of bringing you out of yourself and bringing you into the present moment and bringing you joy. And they were always just this kind of little respite from me being unhappy in my job.
Hmm.
And I started to look for ways to kind of, be more creative and do things that I would enjoy doing outside the job. I kind of resigned myself that like, look, this job is just a job and I'm going to have to find other ways outside to enjoy myself.
Hmm.
So I was always into writing. I was a journalist in the past and I always wanted to write. And when I had them, when I saw those two together playing and all their little adventures, I was like, I should write about them. Like they are amazing. I would read about them.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I was like, I want to bring them everywhere with me. I don't want to like go out into town for the day and have to leave them at home. And like, I want them to be with me. But this was again going back to like it's probably about 2014, 2015, where Ireland was a very not dog friendly place, even worse than it is now. There
Hmm.
was kind of nowhere you could go and bring them inside. So I said, well, the guys are so cute. If I walk up into a restaurant with these two guys in my arms and go, hey, I am writing a blog about dog-friendly places in Ireland. Can we come inside? They'll let
Great
me.
idea.
And like my main motivation was like, I just want to sit inside. It's cold. I'll start a blog if that's what it takes. So I like learned how to do blogs, learned how to do websites, all that stuff, set it all up and just started going to places with the two of them. I always going, can we come inside? Places started to let us go in and go on, as long as you write something positive, as if I had an audience. I was like, cool. And this was going on. I was just again having fun with it. And then somebody had mentioned like, oh, maybe your photos are a bit better on the website. It might do better. And there's this And there's this app called Instagram that does these kind of mad photo filters. I was like, okay, I'll give that a go. Don't know what that is. And started putting up the photos on it and being all like, well, what if somebody I don't know sees them? Like, what'll I do? Like, fast forward to a different world right now. Um,
Yeah.
it just started to take off and I was posting these photos up like and that account just started to grow and it was like yeah it was very basic at the time, didn't know what the hell I was doing,
Mm.
but I was just kind of having fun with it. It was creative, it was writing, I was like going out to places with my dogs. It was all good fun. And as it grew I started to kind of something started to turn in my head where I was like maybe I could do something with this. I had a degree in marketing, I had a bit of journalism experience, and now this whole social media thing I was like maybe there's something here. So I just, again, with no real mad plan, I was like, maybe if I could like somehow carve out a path here, get paid to do stuff, maybe I could leave my job and maybe I could move to France. Um, so I started reaching out to these kind of random businesses and saying like, hey, I'll write your posts, if you let me and not be paid for it, just to sort of figure out if I could do it. And I was doing that for a bit. It was kind of gaining traction. And so like as I was learning, I basically used like their account to learn and teach myself social media,
Hmm.
leverage that to get a couple of accounts that I could like run and be paid to do work for. And with that was like, feck it, it's now or never. Let's just go to France. And the whole France thing was I lived in France before, I loved France, speak French, but also it's so dog friendly. So it's like
Oh,
we live
yes.
in
Yeah,
France
yeah.
very happily. And I was like, we do well in Nice because they could be running around on the beach and all this. So I had this idea of just the three of us living in Nice, and wouldn't that be amazing? So the goal became, let's just quit the job, have enough money saved up to go and live in France for 6 months, the three of us, and just see what happens. And then that is what we did. And we packed up our suitcases, got
Oh
them
my
there.
God.
We
That's
got
amazing.
their passports and all their stuff. We flew business class over because I
Oh,
was afraid, what if somebody, I
yeah.
don't know what I was afraid of, in case somebody like thought there was a problem with us traveling or something. I was so nervous to do it, but it was totally grand. We were sitting there in the business lounge having our croissants. Like,
I'm trying to visualize that. That looks so cute. The two of them beside you.
yeah, and it was just like the best time of our lives. We got
Mm.
out, we got into France, and I swear I had this moment where like we were in France, we just arrived, and like we were maybe it was the first week we were there, and we were kind of I got one of those kind of city bikes and had a little sort of fluffy thing in it for them to sit in the basket, and I was cycling along the promenade with the two of them in the basket, and like Jasmine just looked back at me, and I swear she was just like, well done. She was just like, you did it. You got us out of the crappy job. We're in dog-friendly France. Well done.
Oh God, isn't that gorgeous though? Like, and it's just to have them by your side was just probably incredible to do all of that with.
Oh my God, like I can't, because I was 35 when I moved to France and I
Hmm.
was on my own, apart from them. And it would have been so hard. And I don't know if I really don't think I would have done it on my own at that stage because all my friends were like in Ireland, settled, married, kids, doing totally different things. For me, just head off my own made no sense, really. A lot of
Hmm.
people were like, is there a guy? I was like, no, there's two dogs and we're going together. It's
And
all
that's
fine.
enough.
But like from the day we got there, with a dog, that's a great thing about travel as well. Like you get out of your apartment, you go downstairs, you have a routine. The dog goes somewhere to pee, and
Mhm.
like suddenly people are going, oh, like and asking all the same questions they do, like what kind of dog is it? Blah blah blah. It's like, oh, I know these questions. I can ask them in English, and you're just suddenly chatting to people. And I got to know people just because they recognize me from the dogs. And you go to certain cafes, they come and chat to you. People just do tend to connect with you more when you have a dog, and
Mm.
that's really helpful when you're kind of in a place where you don't know anybody. So it was just amazing. Like every day was just like, what we do now, guys? And we just like head off for our morning walk, go for a coffee, get a croissant, come back up. I'd do some work. We'd head off for another walk and down to the beach. It was just bliss.
Wow. Oh my God. Like that is bliss. And I suppose the way you were describing that having the two dogs with you and it is like a helpful way to get to know people in a new location as well. And like there's a
Yeah,
lot of people that just if they didn't have that they might struggle with that. Like they might feel anxiety around it. So
yeah,
obviously they helped with that as well, that side of
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah. It just because you just kind of you have to go out and get out and do stuff and you have to kind of develop a routine with them and it's just much easier to do. And then you'll also find like dog groups and stuff. It's in every country. And like again, France, I think they're more dog friendly than they are kid friendly for sure. And they will speak to you if you have a dog more so than if you have a kid. And they just like even in the cafes, because I remember there was a girl I knew over there who had two kids as well. And like we'd meet up sometimes and she'd be like, God, they treat your dogs better than they treat my kids. Like, I'm like, well, it is France.
Oh my God, that's a funny story. You mentioned that you came back then to Ireland
Yes.
and yeah, so you had another few changes then you came back with
Yeah.
dogs. Yeah.
Then it was kind of the business had started. I had given myself, so the plan was always, I kind of hadn't thought past the 6 months. I was like, let's just get out of the job, get to France, do 6 months, see what happens. Maybe we'll stay, maybe we'll come back. So we
Mhm.
ended up coming back because it was just too hot for all three of us. By come June, we're like, it's too hot, we need to go back. So we came back and then I was kind of like growing the business. It was all very like figuring stuff out. And again, they were just beside me the whole time. Anytime I go meet a client, they'd come with me. If I was like co-working somewhere, they'd come with me. So like they were very much part and parcel of the business all the way along. Everyone knew me as like, oh, where are the dogs? And they'd be like, oh, they're on a call here. They're sitting with me on the call. And yeah, they just became part of it. And I ended up doing kind of 6 months in France every year for about 3 years. And it
Mm.
was us going back and forth the whole time. That was the plan because I was like, we can't do summers there. It's just too hot for us, just not able to cope. So we kind of went from January till about like May, June each year. And that kind of stopped then when COVID came
Oh
and
yeah.
that coincided with Jasmine getting really sick. So like the final year we were there, we went over on, I think it was towards the end of October in 2019. And I was kind of involved. I was doing a business course at the time and I was launching a new offer and all this. It was all very, very go, go, go. And again, they were there with me beside it the whole time. I was working a lot, I remember, and it was just like intense. And then there was like one night we were in France and she had this kind of seizure in the middle of the night. And she had now, it's again in hindsight, when I look back at photos, I'm like, she had lost weight. And I just kind of, I think I was probably a little bit in denial or because she'd
Mhm.
had like a clean bill of health and everything. And they just missed it, must have missed something. I don't know what it was, but she just was like getting a little bit slower. And at the time she was just about to turn 11, so she wasn't like super young either.
Mhm.
But then it was just one night, I remember just feeling like a thud in the bed and I was like, what the hell's that? And I looked over and she was kind of thrashing. And I didn't know what was happening like, and I just kind of picked her up and she seemed okay, just a little bit shook and she was walking and we were around the corner from a really good vet. So we went down to the vet the next day. Vets in France, I have to say, are fantastic. They are so animal first, like they kind of, your second nature, which is great because they're just like, tell me what's wrong with the animal. We're going to do everything. I don't
Mm.
care if it makes you broke. It's going to happen. I'm like, great. That's what I want to hear. So
Mm.
they were doing all the tests on her, making sure everything. And they're like, yeah, it looks like she's had some kind of a seizure. It's hard to tell what it is. She had been on some heart medication and some medication for her liver. So like it could be related to that. It might not be. It's hard to tell unless you did like a full-on body
Mhm.
scan, which you couldn't really do. So it's kind of monitoring her and seeing how it was. She seemed to be okay again. And kind of for the month of November, she was seemed to be all right. And then we were back and forth doing checks and all this and like, making changes to medication and everything. And it was hard because obviously then I was in a country where it wasn't my first language. Now I do speak French locally, but it was still just a bit like, you're dealing with something quite heavy like that. You want people around you. So I was a bit like, kind of wish I wasn't in France right now in a way, because I just don't
Yeah.
really have any support here. And then I think we had Christmas together and it was our kind of like our last Christmas, the three of us. And it was like a really nice Christmas because it was just three of us. We watched Gremlins. I made them like a chicken dinner. We just
Oh, lovely.
there. And she was still in good form and everything, and she was fine. And then there was like, I think it was in January, or maybe it was the end of December, that we were out for a walk, and she seemed to be totally back to herself, and she was having a great time. We did this whole big, beautiful kind of Côte d'Azur walk around, like stunning walk. But she was running around, and this little dog came up to her and bit her. And it happened so fast. I was like, and she just got a bit of a fright. There was a bit of blood on her nose, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell happened? And like she'd had her rabies vaccination and everything, and it was like a tame dog, so I wasn't too worried, but I was still kind of like, oh God, is she okay?
Mm.
So I went into this pharmacy. It was like on a Sunday, and everything is kind of not open on France on a Sunday, but there was a pharmacy open in this tiny little town, and I went in with her in my arms, like again, it's like, excusez-moi. I was like, my dog's just been bitten, and they're like, come here straight away. It was a pharmacy for humans, but they were like, no problem, bring her back, brought me back in behind, dressed her, cleaned her up, everything. The whole, I was like, God, they were just so,
Wow.
and she seemed just like, look, she seems okay. She's had her rabies. Like, I don't think it's anything to worry about. And I don't know, did it set something off? Did it knock her confidence or what happened? But she suddenly went very downhill. And like I brought her back to the vets the next day and everything. They couldn't see anything wrong with her, but like
Mm.
she just started to just be very down and very kind of lethargic and everything. And then she started getting almost like it was like a bug she had. And they said, look, there is a bug going around. Maybe the dog had it and maybe that's what happened. And I think it just that she had such a low immune system or something, it totally knocked her. She lost a lot of weight. And this was now, we were coming into like COVID had sort of slightly exploded in China at that stage. It was becoming a like, is this an issue in Europe? And we were obviously quite close to the Italian border at the time. So
Mm.
we're getting a bit concerned, but at the same time, festivals were happening. So it was all a bit mad. So I
Mm.
was getting ready to go home anyway. And my mom flew over to help me fly back with them just to
Mhm.
make sure Jasmine was okay and everything. So we flew back home. I think it was like on a Tuesday. And on the Friday, she had a massive seizure. And I brought her, I remember like just panicking. And again, Irish vets weren't open, couldn't get anywhere. UCD was kind of too far and all this. So I ended up driving down to the vets, calling them about 50 million times, sitting outside there waiting for them to open, and got in there and had a very bad experience at the vet there. They were just kind of like, what do you want us to do? Like this dog
Yeah.
is like, I was like, and she was still alive, like, but they were just like she's not there, like mentally, she's gone. I was like, well, do something, like put her on a drip, like do something. And they're like, it's going to cost money. I was like, I don't care, just do it, like do something. And like, again, it was probably again 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, and all. And it was just I was only a couple of days back, and COVID was starting to become a thing and all this. So oh, it was just awful. And like we still didn't know what had happened. Like, because she had a checkup on the Friday and got the all clear, and it happened the Friday night. And then she was kind of in the vets for a couple of days. We're trying to figure out what was the best thing to do. I had been working with somebody who I have to give a shout out to because I don't know what I would have done without her. Lisa Tully, who's animal healing. And she does like work with like holistic healing for animals and all this. And she had been helping us doing work with us.
Mhm.
And she was like, I was just hysterical at the time. And she was trying to just like help me make the right decisions. She was talking to other vets to get second opinions. And she ended up kind of helping us get an appointment over in a vet in Fort Marnock that does both regular vet and holistic vet to kind of get a full idea of what was going on.
Mhm.
And I went over to her and brought her over and she just looked at me and she just said, I'm so sorry. It was like, oh, here come the tears. She's like, I just, there's nothing I think we can do for this dog. Like, and she's like, I know she's probably, your sole dog here. Um,
Mm.
oh, um, she just said she's too far gone. Like, so they kind of gave her something to see would she pull out of it.
Okay.
And kind of, I brought her home and I had her with me and I was holding her and everything. And that was kind of the Monday night. So after the seizure was the Friday night and I was sitting here with Roxy as well and just like, just hoping that she would just suddenly make a recovery out of it. And then as I think I was on the phone to one of my friends trying to explain what because we were at that stage I was like, okay, she's stable, she's in my arms. So let's see, maybe she'll make it through the night and then we'll see. And then she just started to have a massive seizure in my arms. And she was gone like in a couple of minutes, just in my arms like that. So um, yeah, it just was awful. And then I think we went into lockdown that week. So
Oh.
just kind of, it was weird in a way. It was almost like in my head, it was like the whole world had gone into mourning.
Mm.
Um, because I just suddenly didn't see anybody. It was just like everything had stopped and I was just like in absolute just shock of it all. And then, because so much had kind of been disrupted then because we were kind of back from France. Our routine was off and then COVID and everything. So it was kind of, I didn't know what was going on in a way. And you kind of expect it to like every morning you wake up and expect her to still be there. And it's just like, yeah, we're just back from France and she's here and then she's not there. And
Mm.
it was just, yeah. so hard. And then, yeah, just kind of,
How
I think,
distressing though. How distressing to go through all
yeah,
of that and then bang, COVID and you feel isolated. It's just unbelievable.
yeah,
Like.
yeah, it was really hard. And I felt like for Roxy as well, because she took it really hard too. And like that's the other side, like animals really do grieve and really do feel it.
Hmm.
And like she had kind of as well, like different stages, I think, of the grief where at the start she seemed to not really register. Um, like she just didn't see, it was almost like denial in a way or something. She saw her there and she saw her pass. She was with me and she kind of sat with her when we kind of, were like kind of had to leave her with the vets like and say goodbye, and she sat with her for a little while.
Hmm.
But then after that, like Roxy would have been very much like my shadow and she would never have not been in the room with me, and she was suddenly kind of opting to be in the spare room and like on her own and just kind of wanted to be left alone a little bit. And like them, they always say like routine is good for, animals or humans grieving, and we just didn't have any routine then because
Mm.
we didn't even practically go for a walk, like, and everyone was just, and there was such panic and fear and everything going on, which is like, I don't know what to do with any of this. And I was just trying, I think my focus at the time then was just like, I just need to make sure Roxy is okay. And like, because that was my biggest fear was like, she dies of a broken heart, I'm finished. Like, what do I do then?
Mm.
So we were just kind of stuck to each other. And I remember like again, like my one of my best friends from childhood who I've known since I was like 3 was getting married on the following Friday.
Hmm.
I was just like, how am I going to go to this wedding? And lockdown hadn't quite happened then. I think it was still like, what are we doing? And I gotten so like afraid to be apart from Roxy that I was like, I can't go to the wedding. Like, and I ended up asking my mom to drive into town with me and to like her go into like Cafe Nero with Roxy and sit with her, and I'd go
Hmm.
to just the church part and I'd leave after that. And like I was in the car getting kind of giving Roxy to my mom, and she let out this cry I have never heard in my life when I was like getting out of the car, and she panicked. Like I was like, oh my God. And it was just this moment of like we were both, I was like, hey, she knows like she's in we're in the same space kind of thing.
Mm.
And I went to the wedding and that, and I like cried and, pretended it was happy tears, not bawling. Um,
Mm.
and then went back to her and I was just like, I can't be apart from her. So like that was, the whole lockdown thing. I put her in my backpack. We just went everywhere together, brought her to the Super Value, anywhere like that. Just didn't want her to be left alone because
Mm.
she was quite anxious and nervous. She changed a lot after Jasmine passed. She became very anxious and very kind of
Okay.
just afraid and stuff. So she was okay once she was with me, but she got very panicky if she wasn't. But I was kind of like fine with that because it's like, I feel the same way. I want you beside me all the time too.
Mm.
So we just kind of, stuck together. And again, like I don't know how I would have gotten through any of it if it wasn't for her. So she was just my little rock sitting beside me on calls with clients and everything. And
Mm.
just like my absolute, she like, in bed, she'd come up and just like smush in behind me in the bed, like sit where Jasmine used to sit kind of thing. And like, yeah, she just, got me through it. But I think it did change the two of us a
Mm.
lot. Like, we both became quite anxious, and then obviously COVID made it worse. And she's never fully returned to herself. I don't think that she's gotten a lot better. And, to get out of the sad stories, we did get Jesse then a couple of years later. So we've had him for 3 years now. Jasmine's been gone for 5 years now, this next month actually.
Hmm.
Um, and he again saved the two of us because the two of us were just like kind of just holding each other together as best we could. And he came along and was just like injection of joy, and like has a very similar personality to Jasmine in lots of ways, and looks after Roxy in
Hmm.
ways that are just absolutely fascinating. Like he's like her little medical alert dog. He knows straight away if anything is wrong with her, and he comes up to me and he's like, "You need to sort out Roxy." Like he's just like the littlest things. I'm like, "Oh, Roxy's not okay. Okay, thanks, Jesse."
Oh, they're like best pals then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he really takes care of her. So I'm so glad that we have him. But again, it's like I can't like I think dogs they make you, they break you, and they make you again. Like they just
Yes.
there's the cycle of like without them. It's like people will often say, God, is it worth it? The level of grief and all. I'm like, I don't know how you live your life without a dog. It's like, yes, it's so heartbreaking, but it's heartbreaking because of the relationship
Mm.
we have, and because it's like I would go through 1,000 griefs to have a couple of more days with Jasmine. Like it's just it's worth
Mm.
every second of it. Like
Yeah. And it sounds like you and Roxy were grieving together and
yeah,
that you came out like as different people. Because I think like a
yeah.
lot of, even for myself, when both my dogs died, not long before COVID either. And it was just, I'm just not the same person. You're not the same person. And I,
No.
and I definitely feel, for me, it was my first real experience of intense grief. And how was it for you? How was the experience of grief for you?
It was the definitely the most intense and the hardest I've ever had. I have lost pets before and it was really, really hard and intense. Um we had two dogs growing up and the first one passed away when I was maybe 15 or 16. That was really, really intense. And actually, what was really, really hard about that loss was that nobody around me understood it.
Mm,
And I felt very much like the weirdo who's upset about the dog. And when you're that kind of teenage age, it felt very judgmental and uncomfortable that people were just like, is she that upset over a dog? I could hear people saying it downstairs. It's just like, is she seriously upset over a dog? And I was
mm,
just like, oh wow. So not only am I my heartbreaking, but I have to like somehow pretend it isn't. And it just was an awful experience from that level that I felt like I had to wait till everyone was like asleep or not in view or
mm,
earshot to actually get upset. And I just like even like some friends to this day, and I remember even having a conversation with a friend of mine who was around at that time, who kind of was almost like, Karen, like, do you really think you should get dogs? Like, you know how you get? And I was just like, hang on a second. And now that I'm not like a little teenager, I can say, this is
mm,
just a thing that I do. It's like this is the like you don't if you don't have a dog, you don't understand, but this is like a very deep relationship. And like what I think I started to understand as I was like processing as an adult with Jasmine was like all the levels like of grief that go on with a dog that don't happen with a lot of human relationships. And that's what people don't get. And I think like beyond the like the sort of connection we have and the love and all this, it's like it's a relationship that there is no negative side to. And that's very rare. Like there's, even in your bestest friend or your partner or your parents, there's going to be times when you're like, she's wrecking my head or whatever it is. But with dogs, you don't get that. It's like it's 24/7. I love you. You are incredible. Positive, positive, positive. There's no negative. There's no like, oh, my dog is in such a mood. Like that doesn't happen. They're always amazing. And then the other side of it is the kind of the anchoring in the like day-to-day actions that we don't realize are there. So
mm,
like that, and that's why those little things like you open your eyes. Normally the first thing you do is you get up and go, I better take her out to pee, and you go, oh, there's nothing to do. And it's that kind of thing that you get stopped in your tracks so many times in these habits that you have that your
mm,
whole world has crumbled out of structure almost. So
mm,
there's just all these levels to it that I think people who don't have dogs just don't understand. And like you can, and I think like anyone who has a dog listen to this knows, or any pet, that you will tell your dog or any animal things that you would never tell other humans. Like they
mm,
know everything about you. They know you better than know yourself. Like,
mm,
and I just think those relationships are very rare. And if unless you've experienced that kind of companionship with an animal, you don't understand it. You
mm,
don't understand the level of grief that it goes on. But I think I just hate the idea that anyone is made feel like 15-year-old me was feel like there
mm,
she goes again. It's almost like the drama. It's just like,
mm,
no, it's a real emotion that I'm allowed to feel.
mm. And I think, yeah, and I think even to this day, like us as adults, we still receive those kind of comments and snide remarks. And
Yeah.
like for me particularly, like in employment, my colleagues were not very
Wow.
empathetic or compassionate. And lots of people I speak to, like even their closest family members, just they can't open up. I suppose that leads me to kind of ask, what helped and did you have support? Even during COVID when you mentioned that you couldn't even see family or friends
No.
and your routine is out the window, you're alone, you have Roxy, but support wise, how did you get through it or what helped for you?
I mean, I don't even know how I got through, to be honest, in a way. Like, I think Roxy was the main thing for me that
Mm,
helped. Um, Again, Lisa Tully, she's like, I say everyone thinks I'm obsessed with her, but it's like she really, really was such a core help to me because
mm,
she just, I mean, she's experienced it herself. She gets it. She knows animals. It's what she does as a professional. So her support was absolutely incredible. And the vets in Portmarnock as well were really, really just kind and helpful in that moment as well. And then beyond that, I kind of started really looking for like grief groups and stuff on Facebook that I could even just like read that other people were having similar experiences. I don't even know that I posted in them, but
Mm,
I was just trying to find like other people who got it.
mm,
And then the other really like incredibly surprising and amazing thing I had was the level of support I got on my dog's Instagram account, which I was not expecting. I
mm,
knew people were obviously connected in some way, but there's people who like they had over 30,000 followers. I would not know every one of those people. And it's, you don't realize how much. And the amount of messages, I had people like reposting and sharing their own memories of Jasmine of just like, I remember when she did this. I'm like, oh my God, yes, I like posted that. I can't believe you remember that. And like, I had so many people reach out to me
mm,
and tell me, like, one sticks to mind where this girl reached out and said like, we are so heartbroken over Jasmine. Myself and my mom have been sitting in the car park all morning in tears. We can't believe she's gone. Are you okay? Do you need it? Like, I was just like, who are these people? Like, it was just like
mm,
absolutely took your breath away. I had people sending like gifts, personalized gifts around, like somebody made like a necklace with like a paw print in it and Jasmine's name on it. Somebody made a little teddy. I took one of her photos off Instagram and put it on as a teddy, and I still have that in my bed to this day. Like
mm,
all just people who I never knew them, like other than a couple of Instagram comments, were just like suddenly my biggest level of support that I had, and were checking in with me weeks and days later. I'd had Airbnb guests. I used to host an Airbnb. I had Airbnb guests who stayed with me and were like, "Oh, Jasmine was our host. Send me flowers." Like it was just like the most unexpected places. And it
mm,
was just, and again, because I couldn't be with anyone like physically anywhere, it was just so helpful to have just that, like, and again, it was just the kind of idea of like the recognition of like who she was and that people
mm.
were still talking about her was really just meant a lot to me as well.
Yeah, that sounds like it would have been very comforting for you at the time that
Yeah.
people are like sharing their memories of Jasmine and just you being in utter surprise over it.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. I think it's just so unique to find support in those kind of places where you just wouldn't think.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's amazing. And I think like tell me and tell us a little bit more about this lovely Instagram page. And it is what it be small dogs underscore big city on Instagram. I want to get that right so that people can look it up.
Yeah.
But
So,
obviously it started like you mentioned with going around to places in Ireland
yeah.
and helping them out with posts and things like that. And then it just
Yeah.
grew. Obviously, Ireland slowly grew to becoming a bit more dog
Yes.
friendly. We're getting there, but it's still a long way to go, I think, isn't it?
Long way to go. Now, I do think it's gotten a lot better because it used to be just like an absolute 100% no, not a chance. You cannot come in here. Dog friendly is outside in the street and that's it.
Yeah.
So when there's like a legislation change in 2017 that meant that before what they were saying like health and safety, we can't allow it. That's
Hmm.
been changed. That's no longer true. So it's now at the discretion of the owner. So that's where a lot more places have become dog friendly now. So now it's very much like again, I'm not great at posting on it anymore. I lost a little bit of momentum just after Jasmine. I just felt a bit like I
Hmm.
just felt that I had to take a little bit of distance. Even though I was speaking to people still and getting the support, I just felt like I needed to take a little break. And then recently I've been a little bit, and this is kind of another sort of strange angle of grief. Roxy isn't doing fantastic at the moment. She's 16 now. Physically, she's great, but she has dementia
Hmm.
and she's just not herself. And I just don't want to be sticking a camera in her face when she's not feeling herself.
Hmm.
So I am not sharing a lot of stuff. Now I'll share Jessie and things like that, but I'm just not doing a lot. I just kind of want to prioritize what does she want, what does she, and then kind of spending time with her.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm not super active in that way, but having said all that, it's still a great resource for dog-friendly places. So anytime we go somewhere, I mean, I only ever go to places that are dog-friendly because they're always with me. So it just needs to be dog-friendly. So it just is kind of like our life when we go to places, we tag them, we show what we do, we support any businesses that are dog-friendly. We always want to tag and share them. And
Hmm.
so now it's very much just a little bit about like their life and kind of, talk about Roxy's health a little bit. Any way we can support and give resources and support the small businesses
Hmm.
and really kind of highlight anyone who is dog friendly as well.
Hmm. That's actually so helpful for anybody who also lives a life where they want to bring their dogs with them. Obviously, smaller dogs are much easier to bring along, but I think
Yeah,
that I think even in the summertime with places that are more welcoming with the
Mm,
bigger dogs, I think it's going to be really helpful for people to look those up and everything like that. But
mm.
it takes a lot of courage to share like those kinds of personal, kind of intimate sides of your relationship with Roxy and Jasmine. And was there any time where you felt, no, I can't share anymore. I want to keep this personal, or like was that a challenge for you in any at any stage? Because obviously it gets to that stage for some of us, I think.
I think I was always like my mission there was always one about the dog friendly. I was like, let's highlight this. Let's try and make a real change here. And
Mm,
then, when I'm walking down the street with them, it's almost like there's a domino effect of just smiles when everyone passes them. And I feel like that just needs to go further because they just do. They are just little bundles of joy.
mm,
Everyone smiles when they see them. They can't get over them. People like we got to a stage like when we were I remember being in Houston Station and a group of girls stopping us going, "Oh my God, is that Roxy and Jasmine from Small Talks Big City? Can we take a photo?" It's like, yeah. And I know it's me because they don't know me on that account. It's just them. So they get
you're the
recognized.
human.
Yeah, I'm just a human. But they get recognized everywhere and people be like, "Is this Roxy and Jasmine?" Oh my God, I've been following them for ages. I'm just like, this is hilarious. So I just love that part of it. So like
Mm,
the only time I'll draw the line is like if they're not well, if there's something going on like that. Now I'll tell people,
mm,
I'll go, look, we're not sharing as much because Roxy's not great, and I'll try and think of it as like, how could this be helped? Because a lot of people don't realize dogs get dementia as well.
mm,
I've been trying to do a little bit of that, just like, look, yeah, a lot of people say, God, I had no idea. Like, how do you know if a dog has dementia? I'm like,
mm,
well, it's like a human pretty much, and sharing that and kind of saying, look, here's Jessie, and like, people are like, oh, it's Roxy. We haven't seen Roxy in a while. It's like, look, she's here, she's beside me. I'm just kind of not putting her on camera right now.
mm,
But then if she's in good form, she's having a good day, that's fine. And she's happy out and she loves, like she has her little buggy. She goes out in her buggy still. She still loves going to like cafes. She'll sit in a cafe, no bother. But she
mm.
just like, if you put the camera up, she looks away. Like she doesn't want to be on camera. So I'm like, fair enough. You passed the torch to
Yeah.
Jesse. He's gonna carry it now. He's
And
all
she's
like, photograph
yeah.
me.
She's saying that she's done her fame now for the few years and she wants a break. And
Yeah, she's
16
like,
is an
no.
incredible age.
Yeah,
Incredible age,
like
yeah.
she had bloods done there recently in the vets, and the vets are like, haven't seen a 16-year-old have bloods that good. Like, so she's doing, and again, Lisa Tully, she's responsible for this. She has
Mm,
done such a good job with her. I do sessions with her regularly for Roxy, and she helps us with her diet, with her, all the different things that she's on, and she's
mm.
physically fantastic. It's just we're now working on, she's doing acupuncture now for
Lovely.
for the dementia. So it's better than it was, but just it's up and down. There's days that she's well and days that she's not so well. So we just
Mm,
kind of go with it and see what she's feeling. But when a
mhm.
croissant comes out, she still lights up. So that's all. This is a good sign that we need.
Oh, you know her so well, I'd say. You like know subtle changes like that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It sounds like, because, when I introduced you on the podcast and I said it's all about Jasmine, but I feel like it's been a lot about Roxy and Jasmine as a pair as
Yeah,
well, like,
yeah,
and that's a special kind of bond, the three of you, like doing all this
yeah.
life-changing stuff together. And is there any kind of advice that you give to listeners with regards to grief? And I know going through grief, which I've been through during COVID, is not a normal experience and it's very isolating. But if you were to offer any kind of supportive advice for anyone that feels quite isolated right now from your own experience, I guess, really.
I think it's really important to tap into communities wherever you can, even
Mm,
if it's passively looking at them online. There's plenty of groups on Facebook. If there's anywhere you can just tap in, I found that helpful sometimes just to see the words people were writing and go, yeah, that's how I feel too. And you might then feel brave enough or want to share your own story, but you don't have to if you don't want to either. But just I think
mm,
that knowing other people are feeling it too.
mm,
Then I think it's about like trying to stop that voice that tells you how you should be behaving or like thinking about what people are thinking and doing like what do you need to do for you right now,
mm,
and if that looks like heading off to France for 6 months or whatever crazy thing it might be that makes you feel better, if it's shutting people off for a while, that's okay too. Or if there's one particular person you feel okay talking with, then focus on that person, tell them you need the support. But I
mm,
think it's like you have to prioritize rather than what a lot of people will do, will try and understand what's an acceptable level of grief for me to share and try and live in those boundaries. And I think it's like, no, you need to figure out what you need to do. And if that's a case of saying, you maybe you family members or people who are not helpful and not just like cut them off for now. Like that's okay if that's what you need to do. Give yourself permission to do whatever because you're gonna sort of bear the scar one way or the other. And the more that you can take care of yourself in the moment, the not the easier it'll be to heal, but it'll be less hard in a way.
Mm.
So I think it's like you have to, because I think for a long time, in a funny, not to get into a bit more woo-woo stuff, I don't know, but like my asthma got really bad around the time of Jasmine, and I again thought it was something related to COVID, or I didn't have COVID, but I just was like maybe I don't know. But
Mm.
later found out that like that's where grief lives is in your lungs. So if you don't deal with it properly, it will probably crop up in something. So it's better to sort
Mm.
of allow yourself whatever you need to do. And like I at the time, I think right before lockdown, what other thing I did was I found a energetic healer who was based somewhere in Dublin who would allow me bring Roxy and we could have a co-healing session, and
Mm.
that was really helpful. So I looked for like what things can me and Roxy do together. We
Yes.
also went to like a kind of a, I don't know, was it a yoga class or some kind of meditation class or something that allowed dogs to go to as well. So I was just
Mm.
like I wanted us to do stuff together to try and like be around. I was looking for any way I could be in a room full of people who would understand or at least hold space in some
Mm.
level. And then obviously COVID hit and we couldn't do anything. But before that, that's the kind
Mm.
of stuff we were looking to do.
Yeah.
But again, and again, there's always that question of like I think the only thing that not heals, but even like mends a broken heart from a dog is kind of another dog. But it's
Mm.
not to say just get another dog. It's more like I was so lucky to have Roxy that I don't know how I would have coped. I probably would have gone and lived in the DSPCA for a couple of months or something if I didn't have Roxy.
Mm.
I think for me being around animals, if even if it's a friend's animal or something like that,
Mm.
would be helpful as well
Mm.
because they will just get you. They'll just lock into it. So I
Yeah.
think you can find some way, go to a sanctuary, go to something, volunteer, be around animals. But it is medicine in itself. And if you can find that too, but just be kind with yourself is the biggest
Mm.
thing. Like you just
Yeah.
allow yourself to do, if it's binge watching something, if it's curling up in a ball, if it's whatever that is, do it.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's all very unique to the person that's going through it, and for some people, maybe bringing a new pet into their life might be the right thing to do.
Yeah,
But I suppose for some other people, it might not, because it might be the fear of replacing and
yeah,
comparison, and that can be quite unhelpful if the grief hasn't even been
yeah,
processed at all. So
yeah,
it's kind of important to highlight that it's really unique for everyone, and people who would have heard me kind of speak about that before, that I suppose from my perspective, I didn't want to be around animals at all because I found it very triggering. So there's so many, there's the
yeah,
complexities around it is just crazy, and people are definitely trying to kind of get advice from places
yeah,
as to what to do to heal their heart, but we have to learn how to process it,
yeah,
in the best way that we can. And I think whatever works for that person
yeah,
is what works for them, and definitely agree with so many things. And even I went down the spiritual kind of healing route as well, and I did a little bit of that and I found that really helpful. And
yeah,
there's definitely so many routes that people can go to kind of start that kind of healing journey, and even just talking to one safe person in their life can even be like enough. So I think it's just a kind of wide variety of things. But I suppose coming, like, maybe after COVID was over, did you do certain things to memorialize Jasmine? Or, I know you got some nice gifts from people that were following the page and everything else, but for you personally, did you have a tribute? Did you kind of do something that you do now every year in memory of Jasmine? Or if you feel comfortable sharing, of
yeah.
course,
I
there's
did, and so like the when she passed, I did even because it was just before lockdown, so I kind of had a bit of a ceremony that
mm,
which kind of I don't even know how it all happened. It just sort of happened, but I was just like,
mm,
again, I was kind of like, I'm not gonna think or care about what anyone else thinks about this
mm,
or whatever, and I just said like I had because she passed on the Monday. I'm not even sure what day this was, but I was like. even my parents were kind of like, okay, we should bring her to the vets now and get her cremated. I was like, I'm just not ready. I don't want her to leave. So like I kind of I think she stayed in the house for at least a day, if not a little bit more afterwards. And I
Mm.
kind of lit candles. I played like certain music that Lisa had given me, and I said to any friends, I was like, if I'm having like a kind of a service for her in the house, basically, where I just asked everyone to share like a story about Jasmine.
Mm.
And I had these kind of like I suppose they're like oracle card kind of thing. And I had everyone pick one as a message from Jasmine to them, and it kind of be like interpreted that way. I don't even know. I didn't plan it. It just sort of happened. I don't kind of remember. It was such a whirlwind, but it was just like I just wanted to mark it somehow, and like then after that, kind of the worst part was, oh my God, the next I had to bring her to the vets and leave her body. Oh
Mm.
my God, it was like I couldn't. I was just like, I want to go with her. This is nuts. Like, and I had a fleece jacket that she loved, and I wrapped her in it, and I made the vet swear on his like mother's soul that she would not leave that jacket until the last second,
Mm.
like be burned with her basically. And like it was only then I had met, like as in through my business, like I met someone who I wish to God, like yourself, I wish I'd met at that time, who
Mm.
he's somebody who does pet cremation, and he offers a door-to-door service where he would come to your house. He would help you organize that kind of a ceremony. He would do whatever you want. He told me stories where they had like driven around, like had a casket for somebody like who had an Alsatian, and drove around the route of his favorite walk as like
Mm.
kind of a funeral thing. And then you can go with him if you want. They bring like it's personalized things that they know, and they bring it back to you straight away. It's just much nicer than this awful idea of like the van comes on a Thursday. It's just like what? Like it's awful.
Mm.
So pet cremation is go with this guy. I'll give you his name afterwards if anyone
Mhm.
wants it. But it's just like I wish to God I met him then, because it was it was just like I was kind of like keeping it together ish, and then when that happened I was like, oh God, this is awful. It just really brings because you're used to like other funerals for humans, stuff happens.
Yes,
And it's just
yes.
suddenly like,
Mm.
this is a different thing. We do not respect animals the same way. There's a van coming. We don't know what day it's coming, and you're
Mm.
not going to know anything about it. And you're just going to have to trust us that we're going to give you the right ashes back. It's just like, this is horrendous. Like, what?
Mhm. It's
Yeah.
extremely distressing and like unnatural, like
Yeah.
for us to even contemplate this because we're used to, like you say, the human like funerals where it's respectful and
Yeah.
it's drawn out over a couple of days and yeah, it's very difficult for people and I speak to them and they do say that that is the hardest part is to hand the body over. Like it should be with you all the time and it's
Yeah.
just that horrendous feeling.
Hmm.
It's so important to talk about this like you've done. And by your emotion and you being so vulnerable and honest about everything that you've gone through, like I hope that people can resonate and it helps them to feel less alone. And
Yeah.
that's why this podcast is born and alive here. And that's kind of, and without people like you who want to share what you've been through, it just wouldn't be any point in doing it. But I do appreciate so much. Tell us where we can find you if you want people listening to follow along on your little adventures. Let
And
us know.
I just want to say from me, and I'm sure everyone is listening, like, thank you for holding this space for us. Like, this is just, like, this is what people should do. Listen to this podcast, binge the entire podcast, like, series, because it's just such a lovely, safe space you've created. And, like, what you're doing for people and what you do for your clients is just, like, beyond needed. And I am so grateful for people like you existing in this world. So thank you for
Mm.
what you do. Um,
Thank you,
for
Karen.
having me on as well.
Mm.
But yeah, if you want to follow along for some Pomeranian fluffy adventures, eating croissants in cafes and such, you can see us at Small Dogs underscore Big City, and I'm sure you're going to fall in love with Roxy and Jessie. And there's often Jasmine will pop up now and again. You'll see her there as well,
Mm.
so she's still a part of it too.
Amazing. And I definitely love seeing Roxy in her little pram and her little going along the place. And I just think they're just adorable. So anybody listening, you got to follow because it would just make you smile if anything. And that's the aim in the game. And you learn about dog-friendly places in Ireland. So I mean, that's another plus. But Karen, thank you so much again. I really appreciate taking the time to come on and talk to all of us listening. And yeah, take care and yeah, talk to you
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for listening and don't forget to subscribe, leave a review or a comment if you've liked this episode and until next time, take care.